World Poetry Day is a day to celebrate poetry, poets, and the power of words. It is held every year on March the 21st. This day was started by UNESCO in 1999. The purpose of World Poetry Day is to support poets, revive old traditions of poetry, and bring new energy to reading and writing poems. Poetry is an important part of culture. It helps people express their feelings, ideas, and experiences in a special way. Poetry has a long history. Many ancient cultures had poetry. The Greeks, Romans, Chinese, Indians, and Arabs all wrote poems. In old times, people used poetry to tell stories, share knowledge, and entertain others. Poetry was also used in religious and spiritual texts. Many great poets from the past are still famous today. For example, William Shakespeare wrote many beautiful poems and plays in English. In China, the Tang dynasty had famous poets like Li Bai and Du Fu. In the Arab world, poets like Rumi and al-Mutanabbi created wonderful poetry. Poetry has always been a way for people to share beauty, wisdom, and emotions. Today, poetry is still important. Many people write poems for personal expression. Poems can be short or long. Some poems have rules about rhyme and rhythm, while others are free and do not follow strict patterns. Modern poets use poetry to talk about love, nature, politics, and many other topics. Poetry is also used in songs. Many song lyrics are a form of poetry. Music and poetry are connected because both use rhythm and sound to create feelings. On World Poetry Day, people all over the world celebrate poetry in different ways. Schools and libraries organize poetry readings. Students read poems aloud and write their own poetry. Some people join poetry competitions. In many cities, there are poetry festivals where poets share their work. People also use social media to share their favorite poems. Some museums and cultural centers hold special events to talk about poetry from different countries. Many famous poems have been written in different languages. In English, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost is a well-known poem. It talks about making choices in life. Another famous English poem is If by Rudyard Kipling. This poem gives advice about how to be strong and kind. In Spanish, 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair, by Pablo Neruda, is a famous collection of romantic poetry. In Persian, the Essential Rumi is a well-loved collection of poems about love and spirituality. Each language and culture has its own poetry, which makes the world rich and diverse. Writing poetry is a wonderful way to express thoughts and emotions. Some people write poems to remember special moments. Others use poetry to express sadness, love, or hope. There are many styles of poetry. A haiku is a short Japanese poem with only 3 lines. A sonnet is a type of poem with 14 lines, popular in English and Italian literature. Free verse poetry does not have a fixed structure, so writers can be creative. Poetry is also good for learning languages. Reading poems helps improve vocabulary and pronunciation. Many students read poems to understand the beauty of a language. Poetry often uses simple words in deep ways, making it a great tool for learning. Some teachers use poetry to help students feel more confident in speaking and writing. On World Poetry Day, people are encouraged to read, write, and share poetry. Even if someone has never written a poem before, this is a good day to try. Writing a poem does not have to be difficult. A person can start by writing about their feelings, a beautiful place, or a special memory. Some people like to write poems that rhyme, while others enjoy free verse. The most important thing is to express emotions and ideas in a meaningful way. Many organizations support poetry and poets. UNESCO encourages governments and schools to teach poetry. Some international poetry awards recognize great poets. For example, the Nobel Prize in Literature is sometimes given to poets. Other awards, like the Griffin Poetry Prize and the T.S. Eliot Prize, celebrate poetry from different parts of the world. These prizes help poets continue their work and inspire new generations of writers. Poetry is not only for adults. Children also enjoy poems. Many children's books use poetry to tell stories in a fun way. Rhyming poems are easy to remember and can make reading enjoyable. Some classic children's poetry books include Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein and A Child's Garden of Verses by Robert Louis Stevenson. These books help young readers develop a love for language and creativity. Poetry is a bridge between cultures. Many famous poems have been translated into different languages so that people around the world can enjoy them. For example, the works of Rumi, a Persian poet, are loved in many countries. The poems of Rabindranath Tagore from India are also famous worldwide. Translation helps people appreciate poetry from different traditions. World Poetry Day is a time to remember that poetry is a gift to the world. It brings joy, wisdom, and beauty into people's lives. It can make people think, feel, and dream. Poetry is for everyone, not just for professional writers. Anyone can enjoy reading or writing poems. On this day, people are reminded to celebrate the power of words and to keep poetry alive for future generations.